Story 1, New Zealand, where I am right now. Sure, we sent troops overseas in World War II, but which country out there is just like, let's bomb the Kiwis? Story 2, New York City, Moscow, Beijing, better to die fast than slow and agonizing. Edit. New York is now the city, not the whole state. Story 3, prepare all you want, but do not fool yourself. In a World War III-style major exchange of nuclear weapons scenario, there will be no safe hiding place. The survivors will envy the dead. Story 4, the outback of Australia. Our animals are already at war themselves. Nobody would want a violent conflict in the middle of the outback. Story 5, Canada. Not because I know anything about them, but because their motto is basically, it is not a war crime the first time, and I feel like that would help them protect the country. Story 6. Writing to you incidentally from the place where World War III is happening. The best place to hide is your home, the place where you know people, where people know you. It is the place where you are not the odd one out but one among equals. Story 7. Deep in the woods in northern Quebec where I live, I take a hydroplane to a remote lake and live there for the rest of my life. Story 8. I am hiding in my cabin. No road, electrical grid power, or public water. Just solar power and meters away from a lake. Not close to anything important or any large population. Fishing, eating berries, and hunting animals. We will be safe enough. Story 9. Patagonia is one of the most beautiful places in the world. It is located so far south that it would likely remain relatively unaffected by events occurring in the northern hemisphere. Story 10. Antarctica. No one is going to bother you when your neighbor is literally a penguin. Additionally, ice fishing is an activity, so I could live off that while being a literal iceberg hermit. Story 11. I recently heard in a podcast that experts advise going to Australia because it would be a safe place to hide, especially in the event of a nuclear bomb catastrophe. However, I am not sure. Story 12. The Canadian wilderness is vast, beautiful, and rich in natural resources. It features glacier water that is not contaminated with radiation fallout. Story 13. I am far away from any likely battlefield. Michigan is a good hiding spot. At age 55 and already working for a defense contractor, I am not being sent to fight. Story 14 matters not. High ground in unpopulated country anywhere in the United States with a 360-degree view. .50 caliber weapons and plenty of ammunition with trusted family to hold the ground. Story 15. In truth, I live in the outskirts of a large city. I would probably die in the initial blast if it went nuclear. To be fair, I do not fear a nuclear war. I fear surviving it. Story 16. My house, my country disregards most things except for defense spending. If something were to happen domestically, I do not live near a major city. There is a very small chance of anything happening 2 hours from Scranton, and not 2 hours south or east. Story 17. The concept of World War III is usually taken as someone hitting a button and launching all the world's nuclear weapons at once. In truth, we could already be years into World War III when history is all said and done. So I guess I would be doing whatever I am doing now. Story 18. It is happening right now, my human. It just does not look like the last two, so many people still do not recognize it. Story 19. Time to go off-grid. Jungle life, those days spent playing survival games and watching primitive technology and man versus wild, will come in handy. Story 20. Right behind Trump and company because you know those people will live out the apocalypse they caused in total luxury. Story 21. Cabin in the Swiss mountains. Neutrality is already significant, but being far away from population centers provides additional safety. Story 22. I am hiding wherever the United States president is hiding or is supposed to hide in case they have already captured him. Story 23. I have been thinking about that. We need air raid shelters. They have all been knocked down. There is only one in my town left that I know of, if it is still there. Story 24. An orbital kilometer-wide spaceship with all the amenities and capabilities I could ask for, with enough defensive systems to ensure I had nothing to worry about with the problems down below. Story 25. Here is a map of areas that are designated nuclear weapons-free zones. New Zealand may be one of the best places to hide out, but if you cannot make it there, maybe an orange country on this map will work. Story 26. The Swiss Alps, but only if I can bring a lifetime supply of fondue, a herd of attack goats, and Taylor Swift's folklore cabin. Story 27. If World War III broke out and I could hide anywhere, I would go deep into the mountains far from signals, far from noise, somewhere the sky still feels honest. Peace might not last, but at least the silence would be real. Story 28. Japan probably. I am going there anyway, and I doubt they will cause trouble with the United States after the nuclear bombings. Story 29. Switzerland, hands down. They have been neutral forever and have numerous underground bunkers for their citizens. Plus, in the worst-case scenario, I am surrounded by chocolate and cheese while the world sorts itself out. Story 30. I do not think I am near any target. It takes me a long time to get to any other country, and nobody will come after opals or really good wine grapes. Story 31. Cayman Islands, there is probably some unspoken agreement not to bomb the place where one hides their money. Story 32. Right here where I am, opening a bottle of whiskey and toasting with my family and friends, because as soon as nuclear weapons start to fall, the whole world will become unlivable. Let me spend my last moments with the people I care about. I do not want to prolong the suffering of a future dreadful existence in nuclear winter. Story 33. Either Chicago or Canada. For Chicago, simply put, I am willing to pay gang members to protect where I am staying. I will also have a wooden sword and a sports slingshot just in case. As for Canada, I may be American, but I am one of the smart ones who did not vote for Donald Trump. Since I now have a passport, leaving is an option. Story 34. I would stay in the deep countryside of France. There is not a major city anywhere near me. The nearest one is 120 kilometers away. The first city that would be relevant for any opposing country is at least 160 kilometers away. Story 35. Why hide? I would stay in the desert somewhere with vast open skies. It is less crowded, with fewer targets, and better odds for surviving chaos without being trapped. Story 36. Some might say hiding is the best option, but many forget vast areas of connections and technology make any place feel accessible. Realistically, there is no truly hidden spot anymore. Story 37. If World War III started, I would go to my grandparents' old cabin in the middle of nowhere. When I stayed there one summer with no cell signal or electricity, it felt like time stood still. Story 38. Some secluded corners of the Pacific Northwest feature dense forests and rugged terrain that offer natural shelter and remoteness. This area is ideal for disconnecting while maintaining access to resources. Story 39. I would find the best spot to watch the fireworks, grab a picnic blanket, and fill a basket. Then, get my spouse, children, and dog in the car and go watch the show. Story 40. Up in the old treehouse at my grandparents' farm, that little spot always felt like a hidden fortress where the outside world could not reach me. Story 41. I would retreat to the serene confines of a remote library nestled in the Alps, surrounded by books and nature's tranquility. It seems like an ideal sanctuary from conflict, chaos, and despair. Story 42. Supposedly, Australia and New Zealand have a good chance of surviving a full-scale nuclear exchange. I would consider some tropical islands in the Pacific such as Tahiti, Bora Bora, or Fiji. Story 43. Underground. Like literally, those old Cold War bunkers are still around, and honestly, the idea of being completely hidden from whatever chaos is happening above ground appeals to me. Story 44. The Rocky Mountains outside Calumet, Colorado worked well for Patrick Swayze and the group until they decided to get involved. Story 45. If it were to happen later on, New Zealand. Under this administration, can I choose to hide in an OceanGate Titan submarine? Story 46. I would not. Assuming we are talking about World War III in the stereotypical sense that it is an all-out nuclear conflict, I have no desire to live in a post-apocalyptic hellscape. I would rather be vaporized in an early blast. I have enough medical issues and conditions that I would just die slowly and in extreme discomfort. I prefer a bright flash and atomization versus that fate. Story 47. On the moon so I could suffocate and freeze to death and completely avoid the war and any fallout that results from it. Story 48. I will likely be contracted by my state to work at a field hospital with my work experience, and that is what I will gladly do. Story 49. I would hide in Dublin, Ireland. If that city is not affected, it looks like Ireland is out of the conflict again. If it is affected, I would be dead and would not have to endure World War III as a heavily disabled person, likely dying from a disease that medical facilities are too overstretched to treat in people like me. Story 50. Right here in the United States, there is almost zero chance of a land or air invasion. Short of a few small terrorist attacks, we will do just fine. Story 51. World War III. Do not even think about it. As soon as it starts, we are all done. This time, with nuclear weapons, even the major players will die. Story 52. Tasmania is where my family is, and I cannot see them traveling all the way down there. Additionally, we have a high degree of genetic relatedness, so minor deformities often go unnoticed. Story 53. New Zealand is more secluded and has all the natural resources to survive independently of the rest of the world. However, it does not have anything that the other superpowers may desire or use to justify invading. Story 54. The real answer is somewhere in Central and South America, with local food production that will be minimally impacted by the loss of global supply chains. Some stops on nuclear maps make you realize the bombs are not as dangerous as you thought. However, we rely on massive networked supply chains for the simplest food we eat. Having some sort of local food production is not just about the environment. It is what can make or break your survival in a nuclear war. Story 55. Right where I am. I know where everything grows around here, and as soon as the white suburban people get scared and leave, everything is mine, all mine. Your daylilies days are numbered. Susan. That includes all your prescription and non-prescription drugs. Story 56. If World War III happens, I do not think any habitable place on Earth will be safe to hide at all. The main concern is that nuclear weapons would likely be used. Personally, I would want to be in the initial impact zone, vaporized without even knowing it. Trying to survive nuclear fallout would be hell and much worse. Story 57. In a bunker with a shelf of good books and pen and paper. Forget trying to restart the civilization that brought us to that point. Just live in peace until I die. Story 58. Hide from what? I live in the most irrelevant part of the most irrelevant continent. The rest of the world could be turned into smoldering ruins and sent into a nuclear winter, and at most I would feel like it is 28 degrees, not 30. I promise that I would make it right. In the expeditions to your lands to recover items, I would free you from your irradiated bodies. Story 59. Little FYI. Before you post about a country, make sure there is no United States presence there. In my experience, many people do not know how many foreign assets the United States has. Story 60. I would stay home and live my life. I have firearms, neighbors have firearms, and we are in the woods with plenty of terrain. I have a ghillie suit if things really go wrong, along with some old gear from when I was in military service. If a war is going to affect me, I will be home for it. Story 61. Southern Missouri Ozarks is located between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. The region features many caves and spring water sources. It has hundreds of miles of rolling hills inhabited by Missouri and Arkansas hillbillies. No standing army would make the mistake of invading an area like that and lasting more than a few months. Story 62. Was there a very remote island off Japan where a World War II Japanese soldier held his ground for about 10 years after the war ended because he did not know it was over? There. Story 63. I live in New York, so I would go to the Thousand Islands. It is not easy to navigate, but there is food, water, and houses or castles nearby for shelter. As long as I can make sure I have enough wood or some other fuel source, I would be good for probably at least a couple of years. Story 64. My wife and I already said that we would mow our lawn, sit with a pitcher of margaritas, and just watch the show. Story 65. The library across the street has a fallout shelter in the basement. Finally, time to read all those books I have been meaning to read. I just hope my glasses do not break. Ominous music plays. Just kidding, I am nearsighted. Story 66. In a bunker with the Swiss where there is enough food for a couple of years, although it would probably last a month with me. I mean the Swiss cheese. Story 67. I will not hide. I have had enough of hiding, migrating, and suffering from war my entire life. If World War III happens, maybe it will end my suffering. Story 68. The two belligerent states right now are Israel and Russia, maybe China. I do not see the Middle East causing World War III. It has been troubled for centuries. However, Russia and China are not as compatible as we think. Russia has a lake that contains 20% of the world's fresh water, and China has a water scarcity problem. Just saying. Story 69. Right on top of the first nuclear weapon to be detonated. Would you seriously want to live through the death of a planet? Story 70. Why would I tell everyone where my best hiding place is among the rocks, rivers, and valleys? I mean, come on. All the food, all the water, and all the beer. Oh, and Bibles, bullets, and beer. There, now you know where it is. Story 71. I would like to be inside Minecraft survival mode without hardcore with my friends. That would be awesome, and maybe with enough radiation. Story 72. How would you even know it had started? Nobody declares war these days. Could already be underway for all we know. Future historians might decide that, for the sake of argument, the Russia-Ukraine conflict was the starting point. Story 73. Where I am right now, it is easy to secure and not many people know how to navigate the area. That is all I am sharing because no one knows what tomorrow holds. Story 74. Southern central Missouri to extreme northern Arkansas. Plentiful groundwater, rolling terrain, abundant edible wildlife, distance from strategic targets, minimal road connectivity to major cities, and a pleasant climate. Story 75. The Bay Area, South Bay or Livermore, especially Denver, Washington, D.C., New York. To hide in plain sight. If everyone knows the first spots to be hit, there is no way they are the first spots to be hit, right? Legitimate though, Ireland, Gobi Desert, Himalayas, Spokane, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Jakarta, Hobart, Auckland. Double legitimate. Is the International Space Station an option? So it would be cool for a few weeks. Okay, triple legitimate. If it were to happen, I do not think I would have the time nor logistical capability to get anywhere safe, if such a place exists. So I would just ride it out wherever I am when it happens. Story 76. I will happily go to any of the islands in Oceania near Australia and New Zealand. They seem like paradise and a safe haven from the effects of war. Story 77. Exactly where I am, 10 minutes drive from my nearest town, 30 minutes from my nearest city, in my house with a good-sized vegetable garden, land, and a well for water. Story 78. Atlantis would be pretty cool. On a serious note, maybe Iceland. I love the place. It is quiet, remote, and a peaceful place in general. I enjoy the cold as well. Story 79. Ground zero for the first strike. Everything is terrible now. I am not dealing with bombs and fallout or trying to make New Vegas great again. Give me some sunglasses and a bag of popcorn. Story 80. Pack the car, head inland from Perth, Australia, well into the countryside. I doubt many would find me there. Dig out a bunker and wait it out. Story 81. No hiding. I am in a third world tropical country. My family owns vast rice fields and many cows, goats, and chickens, so I still have food to eat. At most, I would build better security for my belongings. Story 82. I'm not sure my part of the world even eats that many nukes. Probably just hunker down on the farm for a while and see what happens. Story 83. Madagascar. I can't remember the last time it was mentioned in the news. It is out of the way, has no massive wealth of natural resources, and does not have a large military or nuclear deterrent. Honestly, as places that will not be targeted go, I think it is pretty good. Plus, lemurs. Story 84. My family has 350 acres in the rural Midwestern United States, so I would definitely go there. I would not necessarily say that I would need to hide there because the likelihood of a world war reaching that part of the United States is highly unlikely. Story 85. Anyone who has ever played Risk knows the answer is Australia/New Zealand. Guaranteed second place and longer life. Story 86. Resort community high in the mountains in a sparsely populated state such as Idaho, Wyoming, or Montana. It should be able to last quite a while by raiding mansions for food and supplies. The fallout will be less severe than in areas closer to cities or on flatter terrain. Story 87. You do not have to worry about that. You really do not want to survive a nuclear war. I do not know what kind of weapons they will use in World War III, but I do know what kind they will use in World War IV. Sticks and stones. Story 88. Local cold storage built inside a cave. Frozen food stored for years and enough ice to have water for as long as I live. A large door is installed to keep out all the zombies. Story 89. I need to go to my happy place along the southeast coast of the United States until they have killed us all. But at least I will be happy as we all go up in flames. Story 90. Not going to happen. It is called World War III Scare Event. It will look like it will happen, but it will not. Do not worry. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the movie. Story 91. Anywhere? Do I have money? Buy a house with some land in the middle of absolute nowhere, United States of America. Solar power, well water, some animals, an orchard, a small garden, and just relax. You are making me rich, right? Story 92. 1. If the world really wanted to, nowhere is out of reach. This is why geopolitics and desirability matter. 2. Even in highly contested areas, even with nuclear weapons, you can be safe as much as reasonably expected in a global war. The same principle applies to cities as it does to countries. Therefore, within your country of residence, the best option is to aim for vast and sparsely populated areas that are not strategic, such as military, research, communication servers, or other infrastructure. These areas should allow you to sustain yourself and avoid being trapped. Ideally, they should be connected to other similar areas or, at the very least, accessible through dangerous but non-priority zones. Regarding countries, the best choices are those far from the developed world, so the Northern Hemisphere is generally excluded. Areas with decent infrastructure are preferred, so much of inland Africa is also excluded. Islands that are too small to be self-sustainable should be avoided, as they risk being trapped like cities. Unlike popular opinion, New Zealand may not be the best choice because it is developed and very close to Australia, which could become involved in conflicts due to Commonwealth ties or other reasons. Therefore, New Zealand might not be spared. Where to go then? Personally, the most obvious choice is South America, especially the Southern Cone, and specifically Argentina. It is very large and centralized but has people spread throughout the huge territory. The land is fertile with decent infrastructure. It is protected by the sea to the east, Antarctica to the south, an immensely tall mountain range to the west, and wetlands in much of the north. The main risk, aside from being near the capital or power plants, is the possibility of becoming a target as a food source to feed war-torn areas, potentially becoming a proxy in the conflict. However, destruction would be counterproductive. The worst-case scenario, in my opinion, would be conquest without further devastation, making it a relatively safe choice. Story 93. There is really nowhere on Earth that would be truly safe. The idea that New Zealand will be safe exists mostly because billionaires said so and is likely just a distraction. If I am determined to eradicate Western ideology and possess nuclear weapons, and I know all the Western elites, billionaires, and political figures plan to hide in New Zealand, why would I not make that a primary target? In reality, the safest regions would likely be in Central to Southern Africa. There is little strategic or ideological incentive for anyone to target nations south of the Sahara with nuclear weapons. Atmospheric patterns typically carry fallout away from the continent, and it is rich in natural resources, making it ideal for rebuilding a post-apocalyptic civilization. Story 94. If I had to stay in the United States, I would go to the Central Oregon coast. The weather is mild, there are few people, and there is abundant wildlife and vegetation. Story 95. There is a mountain community I know of that is not on the way to anywhere and exists mostly as a resort town. It does not attract Hollywood types and is relatively little known. We own a small vacation cabin there, held in a family trust. The community has enough infrastructure to support long-term habitation. It is nestled in a valley that receives a lot of snowmelt in the winter, so it could be self-sufficient for water. Probably already is, since it would be impractical to pipe water up to 6,000 feet. There is plenty of timber for firewood. The only wild card is food. The elevation is not too high for gardening, but the thin, rocky soil might be a problem. There are only 2 roads in and out of town. Both cross bridges and narrow canyons, so they could be easily barricaded or destroyed, making the town an effective fortress. Story 96. Probably the White House. Yes, it is a big name and an obvious target, but you have to be very desperate to actually do it. Story 97. I guess an underground bunker somewhere near a remote village surrounded by river hills and woods that no one cares about. So yeah, New Zealand. Story 98. As a Belgian, Ireland is my best option. It is fairly out of the way and went through World War I and World War II unscathed. It is in the European Union now, so I can live and work there freely. Brussels is a prime target for a nuclear strike, but Dublin is not. Story 99. Since I saw War Games, I would pick a place right next to a prime military target. When the atomic bombs start to drop, you do not want to survive. Story 100. Nova Scotia, because there is no reason anyone would want to invade. It is just full of trees, birds, rolling hills, and amazing people. We have about 5 Walmart stores as well. Story 101. Sweden comes to mind because it is a neutral country and managed to stay out of World War I and World War II. Australia and New Zealand also come to mind because I have friends and a family member who live in Australia, so I would have a place to stay if needed. I do not recall any history of them being involved in either of the first 2 wars. Additionally, there would be less of a language barrier. Story 102. I already live where things will be less bad, still bad but less bad. I expect to watch it live from my living room. Peace. Story 103. In a corner, the only person standing directly behind Donald Trump, while he is behind bulletproof glass. Why? Because no one would be able to come at me from behind and kill me. Story 104. If World War III happens, I would like to be in one of the leaders' bedrooms with some pepper spray, cable ties, and a bat. I would see if I can convince them to stop the conflict. My bet is it would not take much. How wild is it that it is still a handful of foolish people pitting us against each other? I would love to see the elderly leaders fight to the death with butter knives before anyone else. Story 105. New Zealand or Antarctica? But seriously, World War III could end us all sooner or later. We may well fight rather than flee. Story 106. Honestly, even if the world destroyed itself with nuclear weapons, I am confident that South America, Africa, and potentially Australia would largely be okay unless the United States, Russia, or China targeted them deliberately. They would experience colder temperatures due to nuclear winter, but they remain viable options. Story 107. I am a ground zero kind of person. I do not have the patience or tools to recreate civilization afterward. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.